Good morning and welcome to Bible Truth for Kids. Today our story is about Jesus and shepherds and sheep. Jesus is going to be talking to the Pharisees about shepherds and sheep, things that were very familiar to them. But do you know any shepherds? I don't. I live in the city, and even when I drive in the country, I'll see this. I'll see cows by the side of the road, and sometimes I'll even see horses. But I never see this. I never see sheep. So I'm not really familiar with shepherds and sheep. Now today's story takes place right after the healing of the blind man. And we know that those Pharisees treated that blind man badly, but not Jesus. Jesus cared for him compassionately, and that blind man believed Jesus was the Son of God, and he worshiped him. Now, if you know that somebody doesn't like you, or they're always trying to trick you, do you want to be around them? I know I don't. I would try to avoid somebody like that. But you know, Jesus never avoided the Pharisees, even though they resented him and were trying to get rid of them. You know, he talked to them repeatedly about who he was. He warned them, he rebuked them. They wouldn't listen. Do you ever wonder why he even bothered? Well, God cares about everybody deeply. And so Jesus repeatedly talked to them and warned them that if they did not believe that he was the Son of God, they would die in their sins. He cared enough to warn them. Now today, Jesus is going to deliver a strong rebuke to those Pharisees about the kind of leaders that they are. And he's going to tell them about the kind of a leader he is. And he's going to do it by talking about shepherds and sheep. You know, those Pharisees were shepherds over the people of Israel, but they were the worst possible shepherds. And Jesus is going to say he is the good shepherd and that he cares for his sheep. So let's talk about sheep for a moment so that we get more familiar with them too. If you were a shepherd, you would have to help your sheep find good pasture to graze in. That's your job. They also need water, and they can't find it by themselves, so you'd have to lead them to the water. So you could lead them to a brook or a stream that they could drink from. But if there wasn't anything like that around, you would have to find a well for them to drink from. That's how you care for the sheep. You know, they just didn't have much equipment. So one of the things they had, though, was, and you're going to know this, they had a staff and a rod. Now, I know that every time you see a picture and somebody is holding a staff, you know it's a shepherd. So what was that staff used for? Well, it could be used to lift up their hind leg, their back leg, in order to get them out of a place they might be stuck in, or it could be to guide them. But the other thing that that hook could be used for was to hook them around the neck to gently bring them back if they're wandering away, because you know sheep love to wander. Now the other thing that the shepherd needed was a rod, and a rod was like a small club. That's something that he needed. Something else that he had, a sling and some stones. Now, do you remember the story of David and Goliath in the Old Testament? You know, David was a shepherd, and he killed Goliath with a sling and a stone. And the only reason that he was able to do that was because he had a lot of time to practice his skill while his sheep were grazing in the pasture. You know, you had to be a good shot in order to ward off any animals that might come and try to steal the sheep. The other thing you needed to do was at night, you needed to find a sheepfold to bring them to so that they could stay in there for the night. They were just built out of stones, kind of roughly built, but you brought the sheep in there. And then the shepherd often lay down across the doorway at night because, you know, a sheep is very hesitant to step over a person. And so the shepherd could keep them in there quite easily. Now, as Jesus is talking to the Pharisees just after the situation with the blind man, he talked about himself as a shepherd, and those that belong to him are his sheep. And this is what he said. He said, the shepherd knows his sheep, and he calls them. He knows them by name, and they follow him because they trust him. And anyone who doesn't enter by the door but tries to climb in by another way is like a thief and a robber. And the Pharisees looked at each other and they said, like, what's he saying that to us for? We don't understand what he's talking about. And Jesus said again, I'm the door of the sheep. If anyone enters by me, he will have eternal life. He will be safe and secure. You know, Jesus was comparing himself to this door of the sheepfold. That was the only way in. If you went in by another way, you're like a thief and a robber. And the only way to eternal life is through Jesus. That's what he was comparing himself to. But, you know, they still didn't really get it. And Jesus said again to them, I'm the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and they know me. Did you know that if you belong to Jesus, he knows your name, he knows what you like, he knows what you're afraid of, and he knows what you hope for. He knows everything about you. And what Jesus was trying to tell the Pharisees, who were terrible shepherds, that they were like the thieves and robbers trying to climb in a different way. They didn't want to go through Jesus to get eternal life. They were full of pride, full of unbelief. They wanted to get through to eternal life any other way but Jesus. Their good works, they thought, that will be enough. They were terrible shepherds, the Pharisees. You know what they did with God's law? They added all kinds of extra rules, all kinds of things they made up. And they said, if you don't follow these rules, you'll never have eternal life. They were leading the people astray. They were keeping the people from believing that Jesus was who he said he was, the Son of God. And you know, the next thing that Jesus said really made them angry. Jesus said, I lay down my life for the sheep. No one takes my life from me. He was talking about the cross because his death was getting near. He said, I lay down my life on my own. No one takes it from me. And I have authority to take it up again. The Father has given me this authority. Well, when Jesus said that, those Pharisees, they were just so angry. They said, this man has a demon. He's insane. Why bother listening to him? But some of the other Pharisees said, well, these aren't the words of a demon. I mean, a demon can't open the eyes of a man born blind. And so they argued among themselves, and they just couldn't agree as to what they thought about this situation. Now, a short time later, it was the Feast of Dedication in Jerusalem. And Jesus was down there, and he was walking around in what was called Solomon's porch. It was a part of the temple. And you know, the Pharisees, they came up to him and they said, how long are you going to keep us in suspense? Are you the Christ or not? Tell us plainly. And Jesus said, I already told you, and you wouldn't believe. I've shown you many good works from the Father, but you don't believe in me. You are not among my sheep. And then Jesus said this, and I'm going to read it to you from the Bible because it is so beautiful. This is what he said. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. I give them eternal life, and they will never perish. No one will snatch them out of my hand. The Father who has given them to me is greater than all, and no one is able to snatch them out of the Father's hand. I and the Father are one. You know, if you belong to Jesus, no one can snatch you away from him. You have eternal life, and you will live with him forever. But not the Pharisees, because they would not believe in him. Now, when this happened, the Pharisees said, well, you know what, they didn't say anything. They got these stones to pick up and throw at him again. You know, stones are, you know, they're not as good as arguing. It's easier than arguing, but they don't solve anything. Jesus said, I've shown you many good works. For which work are you going to stone me? And they said, it's not for a good work that we're going to stone you. It's because you say that you are God, but you're just a man. Jesus said, I am the Son of God. Understand this. The Father is in me and I am in the Father. Jesus is saying the Father and I are one. Well, they tried to arrest him, but Jesus slipped away and he left Jerusalem, which was here. He left Jerusalem and he went to the other side of the Jordan where John the Baptist had been. And you know, many people came out to see Jesus there. And you know what they said? They said John the Baptist, he didn't do any signs, but everything that John the Baptist said about this man is true, and many believed in him. Do you? All right, next time we get together will be in the new year, because it's Christmas is just around the corner. So the next time we get together, we'll see one of Jesus' very good friends come back from the dead, the greatest miracle ever. So Merry Christmas, and we'll see you in the new year.